So we're going to continue on in our theme here, Season of Love. I'm so glad you're here. Last week, just to revisit a little bit about what was shared last week, it was a lot about accepting and allowing, that recognizing that this infinite oceanic love that is light itself is underneath all life. So things that we call bad, things that we call good, that we might say in the bad things, that really isn't spirit, but spirit's in the midst of everything. And that love itself is always present underneath all life, and that our job is just to accept as things are arising rather than push the things we don't want and overly attach to the things we do want. Allow ourselves to let go, step back, and accept all of it as it's arising. So there's an allowing, there's a trust, there's a seeing of this divine presence. So this week the talk is vibrant volition. This is about the other aspect of spirit. So spirit is a beingness, a presence, and it's also a becoming. And we are participating in that becoming. Now, if spirit is already fully itself in the dark and the light, and there's no more spirit, there's no more love in the good stuff than there is in the bad stuff, then what are we evolving to? What is this evolution towards? And what I believe that evolution is towards is the fulfillment of love in the most multi-dimensional, expansive way possible. So this divine oneness that birthed itself into time and space and made it individualized. So we are all these individualized expressions of love. But what happened is with the individualization, we separated ourselves. We got us and them, or me and you, or this idea that there's other. And so now the evolutionary process was first to individualize so spirit could actually enjoy its creation, be at play in its creation with all this diversity, with all this uniqueness, to dance and play. I mean, we all love it. We all love to play. We don't want to just have the same, look at all the different colors. We don't all want to wear the same color and look exactly the same. We find joy in diversity. We find joy in the differences. But the evolution is to allow ourselves to be fully diverse, but at the same time know this deep and powerful love. And so I believe that as we look at the evolution of our planet, we've seen that evolution. That there is the group, the family, well, you could say it's egocentric, then the family, and then there was the tribes and the clans, then the nation states. And I think, so the big categories are egocentric, ethnocentric, and world-centric. And I think where we've been evolving to in the last few decades is this a real understanding that we're one with everybody on this planet. That everyone matters equally to us. Because if we are one in God, then everyone is equally important. There's no one group that's more important than another group. There's no one person that's more important than another person. And so this is expanding. So love has been expanding its self-awareness from us versus them, myself versus you, my family versus your family, my tribe versus your tribe, my country versus your country, to all of us. And it's beautiful. It's extraordinarily beautiful. This expansion and this evolutionary presence that love has been evolving. And we get to choose to be part of that love in our own nuanced understanding. That we start to see that life isn't always so easy to see that love sometimes. I just saw this movie, Hell and High Water, a couple weeks ago. Has anyone else seen Hell and High Water? Yeah, just a few of you. It got great reviews, and so I went to see it, or Jack and I saw it. And what I loved about it is what I love about movies. It had this story of these two guys who were robbing banks for money, and then the story, I won't go into who the actors are because then I have to remember. And then the police officers, so cops and robbers type idea. But it really went into who they were, all sort of, you got a sense of who they all were individually and what was inspiring these bank robbers, and their humanity, their soulfulness became evident. And that's why when I watched it, I'm like, this is why I loved movies. This is how I fell in love with movies all those years ago when I was in college, because it looks below the surface. It just doesn't judge people based on what you see. You start to get to see what's their underlying motivation, what's the pains and their sufferings that are pushing them to make decisions that may look bad on the surface, but you can understand, we can have compassion. And that's what this evolutionary process of love is to move beyond the surfaces and to go deeper and deeper underneath to who are we really, taking the time to really pay attention in the depths. It's one thing to say I'm one with all people. It's one with everyone on this globe, but then it gets challenging to actually live it every day. So I want to talk about, I'm going to talk today about a book that maybe many of you read. It's been on the bestseller list for a long time. But before I do that, I just want us to get anchored in this awareness that love is. So let's just, with our eyes open, let's just recognize that all the love of the universe that has ever been, the greatest love that you've ever felt in your life, whether it was with a child, whether it was a romantic person, whether it was some extraordinary act of giving, whatever that deepest and most profound loving experience you've ever had, it's available right here and right now. That love is eternal. That love is absolute. It doesn't come, it doesn't go. There's not sometimes in history where there's more love and other times in history where there's less love. That the fullness, the intensity, the passion, the vastness, the power of all the love that has ever been on this planet and all the love that we think may happen in the future is right now in this room. And it's not just surrounding us and enfolding us, it is us. That intensity and that passion and that power and that love is who we are in this moment. We could not walk outside of that love if we tried. That our atoms, our cells of our body, our emotions, our thoughts are all just this incredible, dynamic, vibrant power of love. So we just sit here and recognize that this power is alive right here and right now. We don't need to go anywhere. We don't need to do anything. And then the question becomes, why sometimes do we feel it? So it's always there, but sometimes we have access to it. We can open our heart. We can melt into it. We can trust it. We can feel it. Sometimes more than others. We can allow it to pour through us. And other times it's just words. These are just concepts. There's many reasons for that. That's why we're on this whole spiritual journey. If it was that easy, we would just go like that. So we won't resolve all human problems in one day, even though all the love of the universe is here. It's going to help us today. So let's just allow it to help us. And so today I just want to talk about one simple aspect of understanding, going a little bit deeper about love. And that's using this book. How many of you have already read the book 5 Languages of Love? So a few of you have read it. It's been on the bestseller list actually for several years. And my sister-in-law, Jack's sister, gave it to us years ago. And I flipped through it. And then as I was preparing for the talk today, it just said, this was the time to talk about 5 Languages of Love. So for those of you who have read it, it's a revisiting. And it's good for those of you who don't know. It's very simple, but it's very deep. It's a therapist who was working with couples. And what he started noticing that there was these patterns with couples. And what he noticed is that what made one person in that couple feel loved did not necessarily work for the other person. And what he was discovering is that we all have different ways that we actually take in love. He calls it filling the emotional tank. And that if you're not receiving love in that way, you don't even realize you're being loved because it's not in the way that you recognize love exists. And since this book has come out, he's gone on to 5 languages of love for children, 5 languages of love for singles, 5 languages of love for the military, because the idea is love, we have to get better at knowing how to love one another. That there is always this essence of love, but we are the vehicle. See, it's vibrant volition is the talk today. We have to choose. We have to become alignment with choosing to be loved. What we watched at the movie yesterday, Dan in Real Life, and the teenage character goes, he's telling off Stephen Carell, love isn't a feeling, love is an ability, dude. And I'm like, yeah, love is an ability. And that's what we're learning. We're learning how to be more loving. So even though the book was originally about couples, our intention is always to expand this love so we become masters of love, that we learn how to be better vehicles of love on our day-to-day basis. So the 5 languages of love, just to make it simple, are words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, doing service for, and physical touch. And when he first discovered this was when he was working with a couple very early on in his practice, and he found that they were just constantly bickering all the time and putting each other down. and they just clearly did not feel loved by one another. And so he suggested that they start finding things that they like about one another and make a list. Well, what do you like? And write it down so you don't forget. Now, then he gave them a lesson of something like 1 or 2. He loved lists. Why all of these have lists. The next 1 or 2 months, I want you to make sure you say these nice things to your spouse, the things that you like about them. And when he reconnected with them 2 months later, what he found was that the husband felt so filled up, he felt so seen and appreciated that he'd been doing all these things that she had never acknowledged, and suddenly she was acknowledging it constantly every day, and he felt so good and felt so much different about the marriage and the relationship, but the wife still wasn't feeling it. And talking with her, and he realized, oh, her need is different. And this is where the whole idea of these 5 love languages came about. So words of affirmation is the idea about I want to be seen. I want to be seen for who I am, and I want to be validated. I want you to get that what I'm doing, I'll be happy to do whatever I do, but I want you to appreciate me. That's how I know I'm loved, is when you see me and say, thank you for doing this, or I really appreciate this. And what a gift when we start doing that to one another. And by the way, in spiritual community, what I love about spiritual community is I think all 5 are important, and I think we try to do all 5 of them with people with one another. I see people affirming one another all the time, saying thank you, appreciating what they do, their strengths. The second one is quality time. This is, I just need time to be with you. I need time to I need to be heard. I need you to know what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, not to fix it, but I just want you to know my inner world. Spend time with my inner world. And he was talking about that this can be just sitting and talking and looking at each other's eyes, but he said even picking activities, he found that couples who would pick activities, that the activities actually were only secondary, that the activities were just a means to do something together and have conversations with one another as you're doing something as a couple. So going on a hike so this, again, as a community, spending time getting to know each other. We do that a lot in classes. I think that's why we like classes. We listen to one another. But that's why social events are important, where we spend time just, how you doing? How's your life going? For some people, that is essential in knowing that I'm loved, is that someone is willing to stop and take the time to find out how I'm doing. The third language of love is gift giving. And this isn't about being materialistic. It's about saying, I know that you've actually know who I am because you've spent some time, whether, a child, when they go out, they pick flowers for their parent. And I was thinking about you. I saw these beautiful things, and it made me think of my parents, and I hand them to you. That's a gift of love. Some things that we make, it's not about the money. It's about the time and the intention and the thought. So when the person receives it, they feel so loved. I feel like you spent time when you weren't with me thinking about me, and thinking about me enough to find an object that resonates with who I am and to give it to me. And with all of these, it's a really quick book. If you haven't read it, I read it in like 2 days. And he tells, there are all these couple stories, but it's with anybody, just the impact that when you hit somebody's language of love, they feel loved. And I also, there's 2 things to note. I'm remembering it now, so I'm saying it now. One is, notice if you in your own mind say, some are better than the other. That will also tell you a little bit about yourself. Like, oh, that's not as good a language of love as this other one. Another thing that's interesting is when we do something for someone else, when we give love, often we give love the way we want to receive it. So if I give lots of words of affirmation, if I give lots of gifts, or I spend quality time with someone, often it's because that's what I want to receive. And I'm talking about, this is relationship with anyone. I think about it with kids. I think about it in spiritual community. I think about it the people that we spend the most time with. We want to get really good at our ability to love other people, and that's listening to what it is that makes them feel loved. The fourth one is doing things for other people. So I'm going to go out of my way to wash your car or make you dinner. The couple that he talked with, when he met with them in Arkansas, they said, well, we don't agree on anything. And they just fought constantly, even as they were talking to him. They don't like anything about each other. And they're mad at each other all the time. And as he was talking to them, and when they first fell in love, what he found was that they used to do things for each other all the time. And when they got married, they fell into the patterns of their parents, and he went off and did work and worked hard and was never home. She went off and did her thing, and they became like roommates, and they were always mad at each other. So he said, well, what four things? And he said it was unusual because they were a couple that had the same love language, which apparently is fairly rare. And so he said, well, what four things, if your husband just did these four things for you, would you know that you felt loved? And so she talked about, I can't remember, pick up dinner once in a while, help with the kid, I can't remember. And then and vice versa. He picked four things that if she just did these four things. And he talked to them 2 months later, and it was like they were in a different marriage. They were that old feeling of being in love because now they were receiving love in a way that resonated with them. So that's the fourth one, and the fifth one is physical touch. And some people know that they're loved when they're touched. And with all of these, there's nuances. So he was also pointing out touched in certain ways. Some people like to be touched, but only in certain parts of their body or in certain circumstances. So again, it's learning the people that we know. We hug a lot here when we greet people. And I remember someone years ago said, oh, I was so uncomfortable at your church. I walked in and everybody hugged me, and I don't know any of them. And that was a turnoff. Like, that was a physical touch that was too much for them, that they wanted to just have space. And so I try to, when I meet new people, is to sort of read, where are we? I don't want to cross the boundary for people, because we have our own physical preferences, and it's fine. It's all good. Notice if you have a judging mind, like someone should be some way or the other, but for a lot of people, physical touch is a way to connect, to feel. He was pointing out that, he was an anthropologist prior, and he said this is one of the most universal cultural conditions that touch in all cultures is touch is a way of showing love in some form or fashion. And I don't mean just romantic love. I mean just in communities, the way people greet one another, the kiss on the cheek or the hug or the handshake. There's some sort of physical touch to say we're connected. So that might be somebody's way of connecting. The power of this, there's so many, I'm sure all of us can come up with stories. So of course, when I'm reading it, I realized how powerful it is, and I wish I had known it earlier. When I have mentioned, some of you are new, so you wouldn't have known. I had generally feel of my childhood that it was pretty perfect. I had a great childhood, and then in my early 20s, I went to therapy and realized I didn't have a great childhood. So the issue that came forth in this therapist was, first of all, it took him a long time to pull me out, to get me to talk. Like, I probably was the worst 6 months of just torture of me just sitting there, everything's fine. And but then as we were taught, over the time, and that's significant, it started dawning on me, because I had been in a serious relationship for the first time, and the thing I would pop out when I would really get upset was, nobody loves me. And that would always shock me. I'm like, of course my family loves me. And so I had to explore, why when I was really sad did I feel like nobody loved me? And it came to the idea that when I was with this therapist, that my parents didn't feel like they ever spent quality time with me. They didn't spend time just getting to know me. That I'm very different than most of my family members. So they love politics and history, and if I was interested in that, we'd have a lot to talk about. But since I wasn't that interested, I was sort of left on my own, so I felt a little bit invisible. And so when that hit me, I was so depressed, and I was sleeping all the time, and I felt so much sadness, and just my whole understanding of my childhood was getting reworked. And I'll never forget it. It was August 1986. I went back. The whole family went back. We were all in college and above. And all these happy memories started pouring through. And how did this happen? How did I have all these happy memories and I'm miserable at the same time? Like, my parents don't love me, but I only have happy memories. It's very confusing. And then another time I was back, and my dad was asking me to help him finish with these albums that he had made, photo albums while we were growing up for all four of kids with my family, our ancestors, our base family, and then he individualized it for all four of us. And he hadn't finished them, so we were tons and tons of pictures and movies. And I'm going through this, and I'm like, this is a man who really loved his family. And the pictures of all the stuff my mom did for all of us, I'm like, wow, she really loved her family. They did so much stuff. And this was the ding, the 5 languages of love. They showed their love through doing. They gave to the family so much. They spent so much time with the family, and it was through service. It was through doing things for their children that we had everything. We had them 3 meals a day, everything laid out, every holiday, every vacation. It was great. But neither one of them was their strength was spending time. So when I was with that therapist, I never actually had someone spend time with me before and ask me what I thought. And one of the reasons why it was hard for me to start talking about it, because I didn't know. I didn't know what to say. I wasn't used to someone looking at me, first of all, for that long a time. And just sitting there staring, waiting for me to talk. And I'm like, I don't know what to say. But that was a part of love that I had never received, and yet they loved so deeply and profoundly. And that's when I really got how profound this 5 languages of love is. That we can have someone who loves us so deeply and is giving us to the highest extent, and we might completely miss it because that's not what we need. So we also need to become wise about ourselves. Being part of this evolutionary force of love means that we have to take responsibility for our own, who we are. This is who I am. And he talks again this about couples, but this is how we want to expand love so it's world-centric, is to ask, how do you receive love? And be able to tell someone, this is what love looks like for me. If we're in a relationship, I really appreciate you do all these things for me, but sometimes I just want you to sit down and listen to me and hear what I have to say. Or sometimes I just need you to validate what I'm doing, so I just feel like I'm doing something right. It would be really great, to hear those things. And so we have to become responsible as the vehicles of love, the vortex of love on this planet, to evolve love to its fullest and highest possibility. We have to be the ones who are responsible for it. Not only listening to other people and what they need to feel loved, but also being able to speak out about what we need to feel love, and not be in this sort of, they need to read my mind, or why don't they get me? We have to speak up. And this is how we become these beautiful evolutionary beings of love and light. I was talking to Jack this morning because one of the things he did, and I was asking him today what made him do it, because there was a point where we never had this conversation about 5 languages of love, and there was somewhere along in our marriage in the last few years, now when I start talking to him, he'll have his phone on and he'll just put it down and it gives me his full attention. And I've never said it to him, but I've always noticed. I'm like, wow, he just puts his phone down and gives me his full attention when I'm talking. And I asked him, I said, what made you do that? And he said, well, I figured if you're speaking, you want me to hear you. But it was such a moment. The thing is I got it. I've known it. I've always felt that love, and I never acknowledged it. So I'm just acknowledging it now. But it's those little things that we do as we learn about how people are, what gives us love. We're in the season of love. We are here to grow and expand and be. I love that reading today, that we have to have when we open up to our greatest purpose, which I believe is to be vehicles of love, to be vortexes of love, when we say yes to that, all the power of the universe starts coming to our aid. Beings on the other side of the veil, and universal energy, everything is saying yes to us the more we say yes to being vehicles of love. And this is the vehicles of receivers and givers. It's to be responsible as both givers and receivers of love. Vibrant volition. Every one of us has it. It's up to us to be that beautiful, magnificent love which we anchored in earlier. This powerful, unconditional, unlimited, passionate, intense, caring, compassionate, wise, intelligent, beautiful, harmonious love. Love without end. We are the source. We are the vehicle of this love. We are the vehicle of creating heaven on earth. And so let us just close our eyes as we move into this prayerful state of remembering to remember who and what we really are. That every single person in this room is God's vehicle, is love's vehicle. We have a calling. Every person who can hear my voice, we have a calling from love itself. It is deep calling unto deep and deep answering deep. We are here to be love in our own unique way. We are not here to be like anyone else. We are here intentionally. Spirit has intentionally created itself uniquely as everyone in this room, as everyone on this planet. We are a purposeful, unique soul print of pure spirit, of pure love. And as we grow into the fullness of our fullest potential, into the fullness of our divine, multidimensional being, we open our hearts and our bodies, our minds to all forms and all languages of love. We listen to our own heart, soul call. We listen to the deepest part of who we are, of how love gets experienced in, through, and as us. We become intimate friends with love within us. We know love within us. We feel love in this within us. And as we allow ourselves to see and feel and know our own love, we open ourselves even further and wider and more expansive and feel the love of other beings and how love shows up uniquely and powerfully through our friends and our family and people at work and our community and our planet and people on the other side of the planet who we might meet through social media. We hear and feel their vibrational frequency of love. We listen to their call, their soul call of how love is received in their life. And we are willing to step outside of our comfort zones as love, to share and express love in ways that may not be our comfort zone, but because we love, but because we are love, we are willing to expand and to grow and to open and to open and open and open. To be greater and greater vortexes of this loving energy of heaven on earth. We are the place. It is our choice, moment by moment, day by day. Are we a vortex of unconditional, absolute love and allow that uniqueness to shine through us? Do we choose love? Do we choose to be love? Do we choose to give love? Do we choose to receive love? Do we choose love, the highest purpose for being here? For it is in that love we are fulfilling our highest potential, our highest calling, our divine purpose. And so I am grateful here and now for this call and for this answer and for the fulfillment of love itself in ways beyond none of us could ever imagine, because it's new, it's evolving, and it's becoming. I simply know it is glorious, it is magnificent, it is beyond words. Thank you, God. Thank you, love itself. Thank you, the one power and the one presence that is this love that guides and directs all of us every day of every moment. In deep abiding peace now, I just let this word be now. In love, as love, one love. We let it be, and we say together, and so it is.